The tragedy of causing your own death.
Morning hours of August 18th, 2005, in an old, abandoned deep cave beneath the Y Mountain, located just to the east of Brigham Young University in Utah.
They really just have a mountain with a fucking giant Y on it? They just call it Y Mountain?
A group of 4 adventurers begin swimming their way out through the water-filled tunnel. It's only about 4.5 meters or 15 feet long, and these folks are not only young and enthusiastic,
Cave diver
but also
moment.
somewhat familiar with the place. With all that going for them,
dude, isn't there like a channel that makes a bunch of fake cave diver stories and just makes like shorts and stuff of like really ridiculous cave diving stories that you wouldn't even be surprised if they're real?
This stone's throw of a swim seemingly
Thank you,
looks like a pretty
Yuppa
straightforward
for the
job,
5 gifted
but
subs.
Unfortunately, they would never make it out alive. In the year of
But
2005,
why the Y Mountain? Good
21-year-old
question.
Jennifer Lynn Galbraith had just finished her first year at Utah Valley State College, also known as UVSC, where she was majoring in philosophy. As the youngest of 4 siblings, she had always been full of dreams and adventure. The year she spent at UVSC was everything she had hoped for. She went into photography, played bass guitar, and even scored a few modeling gigs. Following her passions, Jennifer ran into someone with a similar profile, the leading singer of a hardcore rock band named Parallax, as well as an extremely talented
Wait, is the hardcore band named Parallax or is he named Parallax?
painter, John Blake Donor. 24-year-old John from Springville was a third-year student at UVSC, also majoring in philosophy as well as English. Jennifer and John hit it off almost instantly. They started dating and she joined his band. The couple also ended up being friends with many others from the circle. However, later on, their story would revolve around just 3 more people: 28-year-old Kieran Scott McDonald, 18-year-old Ariel Singer, and 26-year-old Joseph Ferguson, all working with the same band. Besides music,
I don't trust this Joseph guy. His picture.
though, there was another thing that tied them together. They loved exploring.
Actual picture of Joseph. like what if underneath the picture
Ariel Singer and 26-year-old Joseph
of this picture, actual picture of Joseph. He has soulless eyes like you, pig? All right, we're not making that a thing.
Ferguson, all working with the same band. Besides music, though, there was another thing that tied them together.
Joseph the
They
Phantom.
loved exploring unknown places, and therefore had a bit of hiking background as well. As a matter of fact, in early 2005, Jennifer had gone spelunking in a few of the caves around
No,
town.
not spelunking.
However, the experiences weren't really ideal for her, as she had passed out in some, while ended up getting lost in others. On the night of
Then why
August
would you
17th
go
of
do it again?
2005, the band played a gig at a cafe that went off quite successfully. Afterward, Jake shared an exciting update with the group. In 2 days, he was going to review the band's first album, now that it was finally mastered. This was big news, and they were all eager to celebrate. On the way home, they decided to stop for dinner, and that's when Jennifer threw a bold idea at her friends. She revealed that one of her earlier expeditions that year, she had explored an abandoned mine on Y Mountain.
I can't find there's one band that has 2 songs that's called Parallax. No, they released songs recently, never mind.
Mountain, which sits east of Brigham Young University. The mountain
I
is
was gonna see if I
famous
could
for
hear
the
their
giant Y structure made by students to honor the university, so it was pretty popular among the community statewide, even though it wasn't exactly a hotspot for cavers. Stepping into the mine tunnel, the
Why?
1.2 meter tall or 4 foot tall opening was covered by a shallow stream of water, about half a meter deep. Cavers had to crouch down and squeeze through to reach another cavern, which was a gateway.
Hey, you know how you went spelunking and passed out? What if we went underwater spelunking?
To a 15-foot tunnel that was completely filled with water, ending in an even larger cavern. Here, the cavers would pop their heads up through a hole and catch a breath in the small gap between the waist-deep water and the sloped ceiling. This room, which could fit up to 8 people, was known as the Golem Cave.
That's it? You're gonna risk your life just to see a little room
Apparently,
size
the whole adventure
cave?
didn't seem too dangerous, but there was a catch. The 4-foot opening eventually narrowed down into the submerged section, was only as wide as a refrigerator door. This meant only one person could swim through at a time to get to the Golem Cave. Plus, what initially appeared to be a simple 15-foot swim would turn out to be extremely challenging. The water, fed by an underground stream and accumulated in the limestone rocks over time, was bone-chillingly cold. To make matters worse, this freezing, stagnant water was murky with debris.
Thank you, Hal,
Even with a
for the 19
headlamp,
months.
visibility was next to nothing, making it dangerously easy to get disoriented and lose track of the way out.
Like, it'll never make sense to me. Hey, you want to go through a 4-foot hole underwater? You can't see anything. The water is freezing, like bone-chilling cold. All right? What do you get out of it? You get to see some cool rocks. I mean, sign me up.
And if by chance someone happened to disturb the debris settled on the tunnel's floor, the thick layer of muck would rise like a dark,
Would you
suffocating,
cave dive if there was
impenetrable
$1 million at the end, no strings attached? Fuck yeah. I mean, if it's like some like regularly caveable area that a lot of people do, yes. If it's like mapped territory, fuck no.
cloud of silt, swallowing up any remaining visibility. In an attempt to combat this nerve-wracking disorientation, some experts from previous expeditions had tied a rope through the tunnel, securing it to the rocks at both ends. Clinging to that rope was the only reliable way for explorers to navigate through the murky water. But that wasn't much help for Jennifer, as she recalled being hypothermic during her last visit, nearly blacking out before the group managed to pull her to safety.
How, not only her, but as her friends, why would you take a friend who already went through hypothermia at one cave and go to an even colder cave with more water? What the fuck is wrong with these people?
Dinner table, Jennifer convinced her friends to join her in checking out the cave she'd been raving about.
Wait, you're the one who decided to go? You're the one who peer pressured your friends? Dude, Darwinism at its finest. I don't know, man.
Just as adventurous as her, eagerly accepted the invite. Somewhere during the conversation, they jokingly called it the Cave of Death, which of course wasn't an official term by any means, but it wouldn't take long to prove itself eerily accurate.
What?
Wednesday night, August 17th, quickly blurred into the early hours of August 18th, full of excitement. The group of 5 arrived at the entrance of the mine around 3 a.m., and after spending about...
Adrenaline's a hell of a drug. Go fucking skydiving, bro. Skydiving's probably safer than this shit.
An hour and a half exploring the area, they finally decided around 4:30 a.m. to begin their descent into the tunnel. However, one of the friends, Joseph Ferguson, who had come all this way to join the fun, started feeling uneasy when they got to the entrance.
Smart guy.
Despite their best efforts to reassure him, Joseph couldn't shake the discomfort, so he decided to stay behind,
good job.
Waiting outside the tunnel's entrance for them to return. Little did he know that decision would turn out to be the best decision of his life. Jennifer and the crew crouched down as they made their way into the cave. With headlamps lighting their path, they began duck walking through the shallow stream, navigating the twists and turns until they hit the 27-meter or 90-foot mark. That's where they encountered the hole in the cave floor that led to the waterway below, opening into the real cave. As expected, until this point the passage got so narrow that they now had to plunge into the water one by one. Jennifer, being the most familiar with the cave, and probably the most pumped in the adventure, took the lead. Grabbing the rope, she dove into the murky water first, and the others watched as she disappeared beneath the surface. One by one, the rest of the group followed, diving into the freezing waterway, gripping the rope for guidance. Eventually, they all surfaced on the other side, emerging from the water into what they would soon know as their very own Cave of Death. As they swam through the icy water, it hit them. They really should have brought wetsuits to deal with the freezing temperatures, but at that point...
What were they wearing? Swim trunks? A bikini? What were they wearing?
There was nothing to be done about it, and they weren't planning to stick around for long anyway. The trip was just another casual adventure for them. They'd even strolled in wearing sandals and shorts, treating the whole thing like it was no big deal.
What? Sandals? Sandals and shorts? Dude.
But only a few moments into the chest-deep water, they started feeling the shift in the air. Once inside the cave, the breathing space above their heads was barely 1 meter, with the water being so stagnant.
Was it worth it to see fucking nothing?
Not only was there no fresh air circulating, but the decaying microbes in the water were steadily releasing carbon dioxide. Besides that, years of visitors passing through the cave had depleted the oxygen, replacing it with more carbon dioxide. Add to the fact that the limestone walls naturally produce carbon dioxide over time, and someone from an earlier expedition had left candles burning inside the cave, sucking up even more of the oxygen. The air in that cave had turned into a death trap. There's no way the group could have lasted more than a few minutes if they kept breathing in the toxic air. As soon as they realized the dire situation, panic took hold, and 4 of them decided to turn back immediately. But with a narrow passage ahead, only one could squeeze through at a time, leaving the rest to wait for a few agonizing minutes while the person in front made it to the other side. Otherwise, if 2 people collided in the murky water midway, there was a real risk of clogging the tunnel and drowning. The protocols, however, weren't meant for an ideal situation. These folks had just surfaced after a swim, holding their breath, and before that, They had crouched through a tight, almost 27-meter or 90-foot stretch. They were already running low on air, plus the oppressive atmosphere of the cave only added to their desperation, leaving them gasping for breath. So with their oxygen-starved brains, the ability to make a decision went right out the window. Everyone wanted to be the first to get out, but Jennifer, having already been there once again, got the first chance. The others were supposed to wait a minute or two.
I wonder if she got stuck there. If she died and got
for
stuck.
her to clear the path, but in their panicked state, waiting was the last thing on their minds. 18-year-old Ariel, out of breath and panicking, plunged into the water just a few moments after Jennifer, hoping her friend had already surfaced. What she didn't realize was that something terrible had already unfolded.
Yep.
As soon as Jennifer hit the freezing water, she desperately thrashed her limbs, trying to push through the freezing tunnel with lungs already screaming for air. Her frantic movements stirred up the debris on the cave floor, turning up the already murky water into a clouded mess. With her breath running out and disorientation settling in, she lost her grip on the guide rope and passed out just before reaching the exit hole, therefore clogging the pathway. When Ariel followed, her plunge into the water triggered a similar set of events. Then, just as she was struggling to find her way through, she collided with Jennifer's unconscious body, completely blocking her way out. Despite trying to push through, the narrow, water-filled cave trapped her too, and it didn't take long before she passed out as well. A normal person might have held out a little longer in the choked tunnel, or even attempted to swim back, but with their lungs empty and the water so murky, there was no chance to reverse course.
That is rough, dude.
The entire tragedy
God.
unfolded in minutes, too quickly for either of them to react. Meanwhile, the two men left in the cave had no clue what happened to their friends just a few meters away. Assuming the girls had already made it out, John decided to dive into the water, but the 4.5 meter or 15-foot tunnel was now restricted by two lifeless bodies in front of him. With no room to move forward and limited oxygen, John blacked out as well, followed by the last member of the group, Scott McDonald, who suffered the same fate. About 45 minutes after they had all entered the cave...
That's gotta be so fucking terrifying, man. Like, imagine being the last guy trying to swim out and just seeing all your friends dead.
Ferguson, waiting outside, started to feel...
Joseph, you know what? This is just, Darwinism. Like, bro, you're the smart one. You're the smart one in this.
Uneasy. He crouched down and entered the cave to see if the group was still around. He made his way to the same waterhole they were supposed to emerge from, but there were no signs of movement or flashlights. Growing concerned, he decided to call out for help. If Ferguson had tried to dive in and reach his friends, he might have faced the same tragic outcome. But luckily, once again, he made the right call. When rescue teams arrived, more than 2 hours had passed since the group had gone in. Thinking they might be trapped in the Golem cave, the rescue crew began by pumping oxygen into the cave, hoping to help any survivors breathe. When there was no response, they started pumping water out to safely enter the tunnel, a process that took another 4 hours. Once the water level was lowered, the rescue workers entered the cave, fully equipped with safety gear. Tragically,
I was worried for a second Joseph was gonna go in and try to save him or something and die as well.
For the drowned bodies of all 4 members, one after another, all facing the same direction. This confirmed that they had died while trying to escape, with their bodies ultimately blocking the tunnel. Later that afternoon, rescue workers sealed the entrance to the cave using rocks and concrete, closing it off permanently. A memorial plaque was placed at the site, engraved with the name.
Bro, couldn't find a better picture of Scott? This looks like he's like a criminal. Everybody else has a decent picture. This guy looks like Dream. They did Scott dirty there. What the fuck?
Names of the lost explorers. Perhaps an enduring tribute to those who paid the ultimate price for their passion.
That's so sad though. Like
June 2nd.
That dude, I just don't get it, bro. Like the Jennifer literally had hypothermia from her first cave experience and decides to go into literally the perfect combination of things to cause hypothermia again. Like I don't even know what to say about that. Like it's hard to even feel bad for them because it's like so obvious what was going to happen.
2nd, 1997, 3 p.m. on the dot.
It is sad though.
A female lifeguard at Waterworld USA Concord is in full-blown panic mode. Perched high at her station, she blares her whistle violently and yells at the top of her lungs, sending out warnings that are absolutely urgent. Down below her station, several onlookers are gathered with their eyes on a particular attraction called the Bonsai Pipeline Slide. A twisting,
Wait, I've heard Bonsai Pipeline before.
Adrenaline-pumping behemoth of a ride. Over 30 students are packed at the top of it, impatient and rowdy, pushing the limits of the ride's safety rules. One after another, they're hurling themselves down the slick slide, ignoring the critical safety gaps between riders. The lifeguard shouting gets more desperate as she waves her arms frantically, trying to stop the reckless stampede.
Okay, this is you're showing a clip from the Kansas City ride that decapitated a child. Different water slide, different tragedy.
But moments later, not only would her efforts go up in smoke, but the once lively atmosphere would take a nosedive into a dark, disturbing pit, turning into a blood-soaked calamity. 18-year-old Quimby Gelotti was a very bright student. Throughout her 4 years at Napa High School in California, she was on the honor roll.
Yeah, the Schlitterbahn tragedy. Which one is it? Schlitterbahn is the Verrucht. I've seen both names. Thank you, Cowboy Man, for the tier 1. Dude, whenever I was younger and when did that tragedy happen? I forget when that tragedy happened. But my family lives in Kansas City, and I remember I was visiting after the tragedy happened, and I remember driving by like the Schlitterbahn, and I don't know what, it's just so ominous. Like just seeing the slide, like it was literally like a day or two after it happened, and just seeing the slide after like a kid was literally decapitated there. Fucking terrifying.
Maintaining a 3.5 GPA. Besides her academic achievements, she was super involved, working as a student assistant, counselor, and peer mediator. She had her sights set on California State University at Sacramento, where she planned to study psychology in the fall of 1997. But before all of that, as her final year was wrapping up, Quimby and her classmates were hyped up for their senior trip to Waterworld USA Concord, one of the area's most popular parks known for its wild rides. In the days leading up to it, they couldn't stop planning. Every little detail of the trip was mapped out, wanting it to be an unforgettable experience. At their school, it was almost a tradition for the senior class to go on one last trip before graduation. And of course, the stories from these trips always made their way down to the juniors, keeping the tradition alive year after year. Quimby and her classmates had been through the same thing. All throughout their senior year, they'd been hearing this so-called record legend about the previous graduating class. Apparently, the whole class had climbed up a specific slide in the park at the same time, got it completely clogged on the way down, and then slid into the pool together holding hands. As reckless as it was, to a bunch of high schoolers, it sounded like pure thrill. And during the
God, high schoolers are so fucking stupid, man.
planning phase, some of them saw it as a challenge.
And dude, high schoolers do that. And y'all were arguing earlier that an 11-year-old prank calling the cops was like a big deal. You know,
challenge to beat that record when they got to the park. The idea spread like wildfire, and before long, the whole class was in on the plan to pull off the risky stunt. As the days tickled by, excitement kept building, and then June 2nd, 1997 finally arrived. The students showed up at Waterworld early that morning, buzzing with anticipation as they piled out of the buses. Every sight of towering slides and sparkling pools had them ready to go. After a quick orientation, they scattered in every direction, fired up and ready to take on the park. By mid-morning, they had already zipped down the most popular slides, raced against each other in the wave pool, and floated down the lazy river to catch their breath. Some grouped up, daring each other to tackle the scariest rides, while others chilled, splashing around in the shallows. As the hours passed, the energy only ramped up. They had checked off almost every ride on their list, pushing each other to go higher, faster,
those are
and wilder.
insanely insane slides.
It was already a carefree, adventurous day so far.
Did I miss something? Why is everyone saying tickled? Did I miss them say tickled? I was reading chat. Everyone's locked in on the whole tickled thing.
And now it was the time to take it to the next level. At around 3 p.m., excitement was buzzing through the group as they gathered around the bonsai pipeline slide.
The ticklers behind me?
This monster of a slide stood more than 12 meters or 40 feet tall, towering over the entire park.
Oh, he said tickled by.
Its long,
Okay.
twisting path was filled with heart-pounding turns, offering both a view and a thrill that was unmatched. From the top, you could see the entire water park spread out below, with the vantage point almost as dizzying as the drop itself. More than 30 students made their way to the top of the slide, climbing the stairs, eager to take the plunge. One by one, they started shooting down the slide, but soon enough, things picked up pace. Normally on a slide that high, you're supposed to wait a few minutes between riders to keep things safe. And even though they were told the rules, they completely blew them off, since they had the plan to clog the slide midway, eventually going down together. What they didn't know was that they'd definitely be going down, but not exactly how they imagined. The group kept rushing down the slide one after another, not bothering to wait, and in no time, at least 33.
What is this picture? Is this real? Chat, is this real? What is this picture? The red arrow too? Do you see the child?
3 of them were piled up on it, completely clogging the slide. In the chaos, Quimby was there too, just as pumped and excited, totally oblivious to the trouble they had created. Meanwhile, the lifeguard on duty was freaking out. At first, she tried to stop the hyped up teens by shouting warnings and even physically blocking their way, but with just her against the wild crowd, she was pretty much powerless.
Oh,
Plus,
no.
everything happened so fast that all she could end up doing was keep blowing the whistle and yelling, hoping to grab the attention.
Dude, I feel that so hard. Oh my God. When I was a lifeguard, holy fuck, dude. Kids are assholes. Like, teenagers and children are fucking assholes. They do not give a fuck what you have to say. Oh my God. Like, I was a lifeguard for 2 years, and holy fuck, like, just telling kids to walk and don't run. Dude, if I blow my whistle and say, hey, can I get you to walk and not run? The rest of the time, they will do everything in their power to, like, cannonball and splash me or throw water at me and shit. The amount of times I had to, like, take a child and have them, like, do a timeout, and I've had to kick out people because they're, like, children are fucking ruthless, man. Oh my God.
Attention of other staff members, or perhaps give the kids one final warning, but nothing worked in the moment. By the time
Dude, last year a kid stood up while going down a slide. He busted his head open and a steel beam above him. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
last student came sliding down,
I had to clean up out of a pool. A little kid shit himself in the fucking pool. I had to be the one to go in and clean it, chat. Yeah, being a lifeguard ain't all that cracked up to be, I'll be honest. I've only saved like a few people's lives. I saved a few drowning kids, a drowning old lady. The majority of the time is yelling at kids to stop running and cleaning up poop.
the slide was so jam-packed that he ended up stuck just a meter down, close enough that he could almost reach back to the platform with his arm. About 30 minutes in, finally happened what was pretty much obvious. The slide was way overloaded, carrying 4 times its usual limit. While the fiberglass structure could hold more than usual, it was no match for this overwhelming weight.
Thank you, Jazz.
In front of several stunned onlookers who had gathered to witness the commotion, the bonsai pipeline slide began to bend unnervingly in the middle. The students stuck in that part of the slide suddenly realized the impending danger, and that's when sheer panic took over. Screams filled the air as those in the middle of the tube tried desperately to scramble back towards the platform, but they were trapped. Students were above and below, leaving no room to escape. It took a few seconds for the entire group to realize that the ride was collapsing, but before anyone could act, it was already too late. The slide's surface cracked at 11 meters or 37 feet in the air, sending the students tumbling down to the unforgiving.
Yo, is that real footage or what? Is that real? That's not real, right? I assume this is a remake of it. It's the most replayed part. Chat, is this real?
It was already too late. The slide's surface cracked at 11 meters or 37 feet in the air, sending the students tumbling down to the unforgiving concrete floor. Even the ones who were still at the top, just a few steps away from the platform, couldn't climb back. One after another, they kept falling down, their bodies crashing with a series of sickening, loud thuds.
Jesus Christ.
Some were knocked out cold, others were screaming in pain and terror, and a few just lay, crumbled, and motionless. To make things worse, some of them landed on top of each other, adding to the tragedy. The pool water turned red with blood, mixing with the splashes and the foam. Everyone around the area gasped in horror and rushed to help the injured kids. The lifeguard's panic turned to frantic action as she, alongside the others from the staff, raced to the scene, calling for emergency assistance while trying to make sense of the situation. Shortly
Jesus
after,
Christ.
one of the lifeguards, Franks, found Quimby all covered in blood and mud. Out of all 33 students, she was the worst off. Her chest was crushed, and she'd slammed her head pretty hard against the wooden support poles of the slide during the fall. Though she was conscious at first, despite Franks doing everything he could to keep her awake, she passed out on the way to the hospital and died about 45 minutes after the accident.
Dude, imagine being like the lifeguard. Like, yeah, I know, like, she did everything she could, but at the same time, like, that would eat me alive. You know, like being the lifeguard that tried to save them and tried to tell them to stop, but they just didn't.
The rest of the students were taken to 9 different hospitals, where they spent weeks being treated for their severe injuries. Right after the incident, the park was shut down and an investigation kicked off.
Yeah, that is crazy that only one person died, though.
And so the teenagers involved, including Quimby's family, hit the park with a lawsuit, claiming the slide was poorly constructed.
Come on, you're really gonna hit them with a There were fucking 6 children crammed together, and the lifeguard warned them a billion times, and you have the audacity to try to do a lawsuit against them?
And that the park's security failed to stop the disaster.
Then what do you want them to do? It's just a lifeguard, man. And apparently they pushed the lifeguard out of the way.
They also accused Napa High School of ignoring the students' plans after overhearing their discussions. But a few days later,
yeah, blame everyone but the children, but then themselves.
The final report of the investigation came out, clearing the park of any wrongdoing.
I mean, your children literally pushed past a lifeguard warning them that they're gonna fucking die. I mean, whatever. I guess they're teenagers and they're like, oh, it's tradition or whatever. I don't know. And then they all followed each other because of peer pressure. But I mean, in this situation, you can't blame security. You can't blame the fucking slide. Like teenagers being teenagers, man. Teenagers doing stupid things.
The slide met all the safety standards, and several students testified that the lifeguard at the slide station had repeatedly warned them not to try the stunt, but they were too pumped up to listen. Still, the park's parent company ended up shelling out about $4 million in compensation.
Damn! Damn! 4 million?
With $1.7 million going to Quimby's family. Her memorial service took place at the school a week later, where 800 students gathered to bid her a final farewell. Some of them were her classmates, still wearing bandages and splints, where they may have been wondering what could have been if they just chose to enjoy themselves instead of chasing after those so-called records.
That's so sad. Teenagers, man. Fucking crazy. That lifeguard must feel awful. Oh, yeah, I can't even begin to imagine how guilty I'd feel. I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing she really could have done more, but still, oof.
Now it's time to walk away. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Did you laugh or cry or maybe subscribed? I'll thank you either way. You know I will miss you. I hope you return. Tell your friend or your mother to get me more views, please.